Did you know that there are brainwave patterns associated with the profiles of people we see with depression or symptoms of depression? I'm going to go over some of that profile with you, but I'm also going to leave you at the end of this video with a question that might surprise you in terms of how there is this relationship with this type of profile. So first, in order to explain this, I just need to mention that there are a couple of things we can see in quantitative EEGs, and one of those things is something we call asymmetry. So meaning that there is a lot of one type of dominant kind of brainwave on one side of the brain versus the other, and it's not symmetrical across, especially the frontal area, but in terms of the whole brain. And this is related to something called lateralization. And lateralization is when there is a dominance or a specialization of something, a particular kind of task or function, on one side versus the other. So in this sense, I'm talking about lateralization of the brain, that we see a specialization of in one hemisphere, the left or the right versus the other. So in terms of this asymmetry that I see when we're thinking about profiles that seem to reflect depression, what we see is there is a dominance of low or slower brain waves in the left prefrontal area. So we see this in MRIs as well, but I've definitely seen this in the quantitative EEGs that I've been doing for a while, and what is reported in terms, and also behaviorally, what we see in terms of depression. So there's just kind of slower, almost quieter activity on this left prefrontal area. And I'm putting it in red because this means kind of an overdominance of the slower brain waves and not enough of the other ones. And this is in contrast to something that could be a little bit healthier, which is if we saw alpha, and it wouldn't be this color, but alpha brain waves being more symmetrical across the frontal areas of the brain, which is something you might see when people are doing a lot of meditation and that mind training. And alpha can be associated with a self-soothing, a self-regulation, and that inward focus, like I've mentioned in another video. But in terms of what we see in the depression, it is asymmetrical. So I'm just going to keep that up there. So just one thing to know is that in terms of how the brain lateralizes or specializes, we do see that the left side has more of a dominance of motor and language functions. And the right side, we can see some things that have to do with regulating homeostasis and maintaining or modulating our physiological state in response to internal, so from within, and external feedback from the environment. So one thing that I kind of wanted to just say right here is that it's great to know, these kinds of things, right? They're interesting. But in some sense, I find that it's not necessarily helpful for you in your daily life to know that, okay, there might be asymmetrical brainwave activity in your frontal area. First of all, are you ever going to really know that? No, you're not. You're not going to be able to know whether your brain is firing in symmetrical ways across different regions. So that's, again, why I am going to continue to go into how this might manifest, how this might appear for us in terms of things that we can actually have the authority of knowing whether this is true or not, and also being able to detect when we are making progress or when we're stuck, because a lot of these signals, I believe, are manifested into different types of signals. And these signals have to do with our social nervous system that translates into physiological things and motor movements and things like that. So how I want to lead into that just in today's video very quickly is that what we see in terms of the vagus nerve, which is a nerve that I'm going to be talking about a lot in upcoming videos, but there's actually a lateralization within that system as well. And that has to do with something called the nucleus ambiguus, which is located in the brainstem, in the reticular formation in the brainstem. And it has to do with motor neurons. And it also has to do with the larynx and pharynx, which I've talked about in another video, that has to do with your voice. And so in terms of this social nervous system, there is an importance of vocalization and emotion expression. So there's also links to our facial muscles and how we express things. So one thing that I see in terms of the kind of manifestation of people who report being depressed is a lack of vocalization of how they feel, a lack of expression. It's just kind of a flatness. And so the question that I'm just going to leave you with in terms of how to translate all of this into something that might mean something for you is to just reflect on, and this doesn't necessarily mean that you are experiencing depression or anything like that, but just in terms of kind of the health of how you regulate your own system and get more mastery over this social nervous system and the signals that you transmit, right, and what you perceive. The question I just want to leave you with is, how often do you express vocally and with your facial expressions what you really want to express? So this is what I'm going to start separating as well. Is I think there's a space for expressing what is happening in the moment, and I think that's really important. And then I think there's also some questions that I want to continue to explore in terms of, a lot of times we also think we are expressing what we really want to say because it's the emotion that we feel in that moment. But sometimes those are actually not so much that we're expressing the present desire of what we want to create in our life and what we want to engage with. We're actually expressing our past. And that's going to be a big part of what I keep going into. And I think part of the way that we get into this is by allowing ourselves to express vocally, using our facial expressions, using our voice, and writing is also another form of doing this. And to do this in ways that we are getting better and better at expressing the nuances and the subtleties and the things that we really want to get across to somebody. I think a lot of us are very suppressed and repressed in terms of that. And I do believe there is some sort of connection with this and depression. So that's what I'm going to leave you with today is, when are you really expressing, using your voice, using your facial gestures, something that feels internal to you that you want to get across? And how good are you at that? Does it feel like it aligns as you do this? Is there a feeling of that this aligns with truly how you're feeling? Or do you find that you end up kind of blocking it, sidestepping it, using some other tactic that doesn't really get in touch with how you feel in terms of your expression? So I'm going to leave you with that, and there will be more to come in the next video. Thanks.